along with the Bonanos, Colombos, Gambinos, and Lucchese. The Genovese family, which is among the top 5 most powerful Italian mafia families in the United States, is part of the culture and history of New York society in the 1930s. Hailing from various cities in Sicily and mainland Italy, the Genovese became the most diverse mafia family among the rest, and are also responsible for the emergence of the most controversial member of all time, Vito Genovese, whose ambition not only caused a revolution in the organization, helping to shape its modern hierarchies, but also overthrowing her like a house of cards. Born November 27, 1897 in Resiglia, Italy, Vito was only 15 years old when his parents, Frances Genovese and Nunziata Aluato, decided to immigrate to the United States, where many families went in the early 20th century. Aboard the SS Taormina, he landed in New York in 1913, intending to live in a small apartment in Little Italy, like most Italian Americans of the time, and also where he had his first encounter with organized crime when he met Charles Lucky Luciano next door. Due to the low level of education, Vito wandered the streets for days on end, doing some kind of theft and collecting gifts for the mafiosi. At 19, he was already facing his first conviction for possession of a firearm. After serving in prison for 1 year, he became the right hand of Lucky, who introduced Vito to the murders, in which he became the most trusted executioner, earning an impressive reputation in the underworld. Thus, it did not take long for him to rise through the hierarchy of the New York mob, becoming an organized crime leader during the Prohibition period in the 1920s, when he killed mobster Ferdinand Boccia on September 19, 1934, at the height of the Castellammares War he and Lucky waged in suburban New York between newcomers and traditional mafiosi for territory, money, and power. Bad luck began to haunt him. Due to the death of Boccia, Vito was forced to flee to Italy, where he stayed for 11 years, made connections, extorted money, and even flirted with fascism preached by Benito Mussolini. Upon his return in 1946, Vito found himself in a very different scene of the Italian mafia in New York than the one he had left, including his post being filled by Albert Anastasia, then a drug-smuggling leader who took a seat on the Brooklyn docks. There was a striking feature in Anastasia's character: he did not let anyone piss him off, so the presence of Vito did not affect him. On top of that, there was also Frank Costello, Lucky's underboss in the family, who took over after being extradited to Italy as a reward for his help during the war in New York's crackdown, a year after Lucky's return. Consequently, Costello became untouchable, and Vito could only wait, find cracks in power and build his base in order to restore his prestigious position in the mafia, regaining control of the family, and his wait was worth it, as in the 1950s Costello's power began to wane as he lost his loyal allies through death or deportation, until only Anastasia remained. On May 2, 1957, Vito attempted to assassinate Costello, who, horrified, had decided to leave organized crime. Then, on October 25, Anastasia was killed in the hair salon of the Park Sheraton Hotel in Manhattan by Vito's henchmen. Vito renamed the family Genovese, calling a meeting on November 14 at his friend Joseph Barbera's country estate in Apalachin, 200 miles northwest of New York City, to secure his return to power and gain approval from the bandits, bosses or representatives of each of the 5 New York families, and other mafiosi from California to Cuba took to the roads in their Cadillacs to what became the meeting of the century. The location chosen by Vito was strategic, as it was supposed to be out of the sight of the police. However, ironically, federal agent Ed Croswell managed to track the motorcade to a farm, where he called for backup. 100 gangsters gathered outside the house, in the backyard, to start Vito's holiday with a barbecue. The meeting was a celebration for the FBI agents, who captured 60 mobsters while trying to escape in all directions, carrying jewelry and wads of cash. Interestingly, Vito was the only one released by the agents, stating that he was only on the farm for the barbecue and that he had nothing to do with these men. This situation gave rise to the hypothesis that the meeting may have been Vito's trap to inherit mafia sovereignty without any fighting or bloodshed. He got all the attention no criminal would want, especially his mafia connections, pulling her out of the shadows of the suburbs and presenting her to the world on a silver platter, including the FBI, which up until that point had denied her existence. Meanwhile, Robert F. Kennedy built his entire government campaign on an anti-mafia crusade that cemented him in the history of U.S. politics, getting to the bottom of the problem and creating hundreds of costs for the criminal organization, from harassment to the destruction of money sources. Thus began the end of the mafia. In April 1959, Vito Genovese was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for drug involvement. His empire of power and influence also crumbled, even though he was still in control of many aspects while behind bars. as the Mafia lashed out at him for exposing them with his meeting. The perpetrator died of a heart attack on February 14, 1969, carrying his ambitions and perhaps the secret that he was responsible for sinking the real Mode Empire. Thank you for your attention.